It's so communal. It's such a unity of everyone in the room with you at the moment that it's very spiritual. It's very intimate.
It's like you're floating on, you know, a little bit off the ground.
It's a great thing when you can stun your audience, like when the song ends and they're just like, you know, that stunt moment of whoa, you know.
Everybody just wants to be loved.
Yeah, it was in the air.
It was just silence, and that silence was part of the music. Music is sculpted silence.
Sliding in one more time for me. Sliding in one more time for me. This New York City doll, wrap his skinny junkie arms around a memory.
On a chilly February night in 2005, a small group of Nashville-based musicians gathered for their first band practice. The boys in the band were well known in the country music mecca, all sought-after session artists, producers, sidemen, songwriters, and solo artists. Frontmen Tommy Womack and Will Kimbrough had played in a band together previously. Their band, The Biscuits, won critical acclaim and a recording contract with John Prine's Oh Boy label. The Biscuits was short-lived, but the friendship and the working relationship continued. As solo artists, they built up their own individual fan bases while still creating a following for their duo shows as well. They decided to call the band Daddy, and that first practice turned into their first gig. The next morning, Daddy loaded up their gear, grabbed sound tech Michael Webb, and headed out for Frankfort, Kentucky to meet up with their record producer, Russ Riddle. Russ had rented out the Frankfort Women's Club for the weekend, where the band would record their first album, a live recording in front of an audience of loyal fans who had never seen this band perform. The fans had traveled from all over the U.S. for this event, and 2 women even came over from London. Will and Tommy knew that they had a good set of songs, world-class musicians to perform them, and enthusiastic fans to urge them on. The fans knew they were witnessing history in the making. The band played their first set of 16 songs early in the evening, broke for a pitch-in dinner supplied by the fans, and then played the same set again later that night. Everyone returned to the Frankfort Holiday Inn for a late-night party in the hotel bar. The next morning, groups broke off for eating, shopping, and jam sessions, only to return to the women's club that night for 2 more sets of the same 16 songs. It would seem that seeing the same show 4 times in 24 hours would become monotonous, or at least less exciting each time. But that wasn't the case. Daddy's audience knew that they were experiencing the creation of something fantastic. They felt as though they were a part of the show and an integral piece of the recording process. Each performance was more outrageous than the previous one, and with each performance, the band felt more at ease, more in tune with each other, and more connected to their audience. As the musicians grew more comfortable, their audience became more energized. By the time the band began their 4th and final set, the room was in a frenzy. The band knew that they had at least 1 good take of each song. They had tightened up the songs by then, and the fans were familiar with them. Daddy loosened up and let the music flow. The crowd felt free to clap, dance, and sing along, and the weekend turned into one of those unforgettable shows that people talk about years after the fact. When Daddy slipped into a fan favorite, Slide It In, the mood changed suddenly. Instead of dancing and singing along, the crowd grew quiet, but eerily alert. It seemed as though the whole room was mesmerized, sitting on the edges of their seats, leaning forward, waiting. For what, they weren't sure, but the band delivered it. The crowd was swept away by the music, their hearts racing as the instruments played faster and louder. The guitar screeched higher and higher, then dropped abruptly, to the final line of the song. By the time the song ended, everyone in the room was in sync with one another, and the last thing they wanted to do was let the song end. As Daddy wound down the song, the tension grew, leaving the crowd in a stunned silence as the last notes faded away. No one moved, no one cheered. They sat there, taking it in. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds, 5 seconds, 6 seconds.
And there's that particular moment where we played that song Slide It In, right? And it was, I don't remember if it was the last time we played it, because we played 2 nights and 2 shows a night. So we had 4 takes of every song. You know, I mean, we knew that one was going to be the one. You know, but you don't always know. Sometimes you play, and when you listen back, what felt really good and you didn't make any mistakes, it's just sort of like lays there. But that one actually is, you know, that's the whole take from that version. And when we finished playing, yeah, you literally could have heard a pin drop. That's when people are paying attention, and I guess you have to sort of earn that, you know, you have to get, and that, like the Daddy recording was us in front of people that did know us, you know, and they might not have known those songs because they were new, but most of them were, but so people were giving us the benefit of the doubt and really paying attention and honoring that we were recording, so to be quiet during the take. And there were some hoots and hollers too sometimes, which is great. It's a live record, but I mean, that's us playing in front of like mostly a crowd of people that knew us. Like personally, we knew almost everybody in the room.
Right.
Even if it was the people from England that came over and the people from Connecticut that came over.
So do you think that's something that we maybe created, like that moment?
Well, I think we did at that time, but by the same token, 7 years later, 2 nights ago in Key West, you know, I played for people that I knew a handful of them, but I didn't know the rest of them, and we had some real moments like that.
The interesting thing was the band wasn't even really that well developed yet, so they were some of the magic on some the great moments musically that happened. I don't know if how many of them made it to that final album, but for that weekend, some of the things that were really fun for all of us watching, I think, was the band just discovering themselves, and the setting was really charmed. It was a charming little setting. Mm-hmm. But there were some interesting musical moments just because the guys were only playing some of those songs for like the 3rd or 4th time, you know, so. But that audience was there for a reason. They already liked the boys in the band. They, you know, that audience was a perfect audience for the Daddy record because they were, you know, it was in an ideal setting. It was, you know, a well-informed, interested audience. They liked music. They felt like, you know, again, they were part of it.
And that particular song, it's a great song. And it's kind of dark and it's got heavy. And it's, you know, so it's a great thing when you can stun your audience, like when the song ends and they're just like, you know, that stunt moment of whoa, you know, that's incredible. And you have to be a great songwriter to write a song that can do that.
So with Daddy, you had Tommy fans and Will fans and people that knew all about the musicians involved. Mm-hmm. People were naturally kind of excited to see what would happen. You know, so it was a win-win. I guess it could have blown up, but they did great. You know, I think both the boys showed their strengths. They chose a good band, you know, that could handle you know, the task at hand. They had worked their parts out pretty well. Tommy played great. Will played great.
Everybody was with us to the point we had formed a bond with the audience so strong at that moment in the show and that moment in the song that the pregnant pause came and they knew not to clap yet. We had created such a mood that everybody knew not even to go woo or anything. It was just silence, and that silence was part of the music. Music is sculpted silence. The canvas you paint on is silence. And what you don't play is as important as what you do.
So what was it that happened the last time the song was played? Fans loved the song the first time they heard it. Why was the fourth set any different than all the other times they played the song?
That I wish I knew, you know, because it could be any number of reasons, and I don't know really what they are. I mean, it could be the drummer is having a bad, you know, it's like one of those times where when everybody's on, like when you got 5 or 6 people on stage, everybody is like, you hit that wave, that thing together, and I don't know. I mean, it's hard to describe. I just don't know.
That one time, I think I can't remember which one that was.
I think it was the last.
Then basically they gelled and they finally got it right. And I think that not only did they get it right, it was a perfect combination of it being fresh for them, but they all played with confidence and defined it. And I think the fact that everybody got to see them kind of get to that point, you know, helped everyone kind of be in it together. Like, okay, like I feel like we were all in it together, watching the boys hone it. And then because it was great to everyone, but everyone knew this one thing, we could get this a little better with that. And so everybody got to share and watch that, and I think that was a little fascinating for everybody, the audience. Maybe not so much for those of us who do it all the time, but I think for the audience it was fascinating. You know, you got to watch them and then hear the difference, and it was an emotional performance, but accurate, and it just had a little bit more definition. And everyone, in my opinion, everybody being there for that, watching it get a little better and a little better, I think, you know, and then seeing the results of it, I think contributed to everybody being really satisfied with that performance, you know, and not just the band, the audience too. I think that had a lot to do with it. And it was in the air. The band was getting familiar with the surroundings. They were used to the sound in the room by that time. You know, they were more confident in the songs because they'd already played them now, 3 times. So the second night had quite a few improvements in terms of their execution of the song in general. But the first night was really fiery and fun. Yeah, I think everybody's seeing the band go through the discussions of what to do a little bit, you know, tweak it and hear the difference. I think that's what did it. I think that contributed. Everyone felt like they were part of the process.
That one was a combination of everybody knowing it better. Most of that whole record is from that last night, the 4th performance. Most of the whole thing is from that, because we had 2 chances, and then everybody had a big party, and then we woke up the next day and we had 2 more chances. And so I think I knew on that song that we did hit the groove that was right. and I knew I had to hold back from speeding up or anything because I was singing on that Slide It In song. And I did it, you know, I like stayed with, I reacted to Paul and Dave and John and Tommy rather than, like I led the song because it's a song that I wrote and it's a song I was singing, playing the guitar solos on it, but I let them, since they knew the song now, I just rode on them rather than like kind of pull them along, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does.
And I think that the audience did the same thing. You could just feel that it was right. It didn't need to get faster. It didn't need to get slower. It could just breathe. And that song.
Author Kurt Vonnegut once said, "No matter how bad things get, music will still be wonderful." And that moment, the groove we're talking about, is part of what makes things wonderful.
But then you look, you know, like at a symphony where they're reading notes on a page, and you got whatever 100 people on stage sometimes, and it's the same thing though. When they hit it, when you got 100 people on stage, and you guys nail it, and you have that moment with the audience, I mean, it's unbelievable. You know, and so there's no improvisation. You know, like sometimes when like playing with Daddy, you don't really know what's going to happen. You know, you play the song and it'll be a little different. You know, it's basically the same form, but you know, the ending might be longer or the guitar solo will be different. You know, you're going to play different notes on the bass, or Paul would play different things on the drums maybe. But you know, the symphony orchestra, you know, you look at those guys and they're playing the same notes every night. They're on a page, but they have those they have those moments too, you know, where it's like, okay, we have performed that song, we just performed that piece, you know, everyone was on, and the audience, we've stunned the audience, you know. So it's funny, and there's so many variables. You know, could be what you had for dinner, or you know, there could be, you know, some guy in the third row talking the whole time. You know, all those things. It's all those little things. One little distraction, you know, can make all the difference. You know, and it can come down to like one guy asleep in the front row. And it's like you can't stop looking at him because, you know, he's like right there where you're looking whenever you look down.
Sometimes just relaxing and letting the music happen is all it takes.
That record is an alcohol-fueled record.
You think so?
Yeah. There was a lot of Kentucky bourbon, but I think all the songs on the records are from second set. You know, we played the show 2 times each night, and so we always had more to drink. And there's also the fact that we can relax because, okay, we've got one. We know we all played the songs good. And so then the second show each night was like, you know, well just, you know, let your freak flag fly, you know, because there was no pressure. And that happens a lot in the studio too, where you'll record a song and you'll get a good one. And we'll say, okay, that's good, but let's just try one more. You know, and then you can relax because you think, well, we've got the song recorded. And so there's that thing when you already have one in the can, that it's easier, you can relax more, you know, and then you can just play. You can just play. You don't have to worry about, okay, am I going to do it right now, or, you know, because you've already done it right.
I mean, it really is like to be warmed up and to know your material inside and out allows you to play with it a little bit more. Allows you to relax and have something to say and then flow into the next song and then pace the show right. You got to have your gear working right, you know. I spend a lot of time, you know, working on my gear, making sure it works, and then I stick it in, you know, like a pedal board in a suitcase and fly it somewhere and get there and everything's off of it because it's been tossed around and pickup's knocked out on my guitar. It was like that yesterday, and I don't think they were especially rough with anything. It's just luggage, you know. So you get to where you're going and rebuild your gear, and do your show, you know. So it's all ties in together. It really all does, like having it all together.
Vonnegut also said, "The leading character in every play is the audience. The leading character in every novel is the reader." And the same can be said for music. Without an audience, music loses its reason for existence.
On the Slide It In, I mean, we found the right place for it, and every once in a while we find it again, even on that song, but it's rare. Like if your recording is like the really great live version, because you can always transcend the studio version. I think if you're a good live performer, then that's great. You'll have a nice, polite recording of a song, and then you can go.
You can copy that. You can repeat that.
And you can make it better probably, but just because you're in the same room with people, you know, that just being in the room with the bodies and the people, it's the voices coming out of your mouth at that particular moment changes everything. You know.
Oh, alcohol. We got to alcohol.
Yeah.
So
Does it make a good difference or a bad difference?
there's a point where it's good, and then if there's too much of it, it's bad. So there's a fine line there. You know, you want people to be loose and have that energy, you know, and be relaxed and have fun. But then if they're just drunk, you know, that's bad.
Right.
And with prime shows, it depends. I mean, sometimes, we've played shows where they've kicked people out before the opening act goes on.
Oh, wow.
People are so drunk, you know. And it's so funny because they're so excited, you know, like John's their hero and all this stuff, and they get just so excited and start drinking, you know, before the show and stuff, and then they get to the show and it's like, you know, well, you blew it.
Right,
You know,
right.
there was a chance to see one of your heroes and then you're too drunk and we're going to throw you out. And then you get the people who just yell out during the whole show, you know, like sometimes they're yelling out for songs that we already played. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I remember it's like you're floating on, you know, a little bit off the ground, and that's what I aspire to every night, and it's you know, you just don't get it every night, but that's why it's so important to have it together, so that that maybe to somebody in the audience, there's moments like that every night that you play. But those moments happen. Sometimes they happen for me, and the audience isn't into it. Like I figure out a new thing I can do, and over time it becomes something that people pay attention to.
I've done shows where I thought it was just we all had a bad night. Then I go out and talk to people in the audience, and they go, "Wow, that's the best I've ever heard you guys play." It's like, now how did I miss that? You know what? That's another question: is why did they think it was so great, and I felt like, you know, I was playing like crap. And that happens. That's happened a lot in my, you know, over however many years, where you think, God, I'm glad that night's over, and then people come up and go, man, you guys were great. It's like, how do you figure? Explain to me why that is.
Once the audience knows your material, once you've established a long-term rapport with them, show after show, they enjoy it more and more every time. And I used to make the mistake of thinking I had to hit them with more different funny stuff every show, that the joke wouldn't be funny the same time. And then I came to realize that they're not catching everything you say every show. People don't have photographic memories. They only catch a bit of it. And especially if they've had a few, they catch less of it. They came not wanting to be made to laugh by jokes they never heard before, which theoretically are the only ones that are going to work. No, they wanted to hear the funny bit they heard before. The Gene Simmons story in the middle of A Little Bit of Sex. I thought people would not want to hear that if they've heard it once or twice before, and I would jazz it up. But people came to hear that and they wanted to hear it because they knew already that it was funny, and they would laugh at the same bits that they laughed at before and before that. And that was a big revelation to me, that I didn't have to be funny with new material every time I came to town. Sure, you have to give them new zingers. Introduce a few zingers to the show that you didn't have the time before, but keep the old zingers because they work.
It's having confidence too, just having confidence. Like, they may not like me, but I know I'm going to give them a good show. That's a big part of it. And so, but if you exude that way, I mean, it doesn't have to be cocky confidence. It's just like, I'm not going to apologize in advance. I mean, I've heard a lot of young people go, well, okay, I'm going to try this new one. Sorry in advance if I messed it up. I mean, it's like, you don't need to apologize to your audience, especially not in advance. I mean, I guess self-deprecation can be charming, but not all night. If people didn't pay to come see you, apologize to them. I mean, unless they're a comedian and it's their shtick or whatever. But I mean, so I mean, I've learned that too. You know, like just accept. It's good to be comfortable in your own skin, especially on stage. And it's a good place to find out that you're not quite there yet. You know, to walk out on stage and go, "Oh, I'm not ready for this." You know, or I'm not ready to do this song when you're already playing. We're already a minute into it. Repetition of things, if it's not done to the point where you're burned out, I mean, that's called rehearsing, I guess, but in my world there's not as much rehearsing. It's sort of like your rehearsing was done as you were learning to play your instruments.
There's an electricity and a good hum you can feel from a good audience, and that makes so much more of a difference than a dead audience. Because in a live recording and in live theater, the audience isn't really just the audience, they're part of it. There's a difference between doing it for yourself and then doing it for an audience. Because when you get that feedback from the audience, you feel there's just another sort of energy, which I guess you know. You're not just delivering your lines, you're part of the whole energy in the room. It's tough to explain, but you can feel it. It's a very tangible difference. You know, another interesting thing, sometimes you think a show is going to be bad, and then it'll turn out to be a great show, and that's always because of the audience. Always. Now you can have these other little perks where, for instance, you're in the theater and you think, this is not gonna, it's gonna be a dead show, and then due to some fluke, the sound will be perfect on stage and it'll be perfect in the house, and you're like, wow, it really sounds great. But if the audience isn't there to make it, it doesn't mean anything. Mm-hmm. So the audience is the, you know, you can't ignore it. That's what it's all about. You know, it's you, the fans.
It is often thought that intimacy is pivotal when it comes to a performance, but there are some factors that cause the loss of intimacy before it can even be created.
I've played some big shows with, playing guitar. Like I played that Gulf Coast thing with Jimmy Buffett, and there was 40-something thousand people there. I played Hardly Strictly Bluegrass with Emmylou Harris, and there was 150,000 people. And it's really neat and cool, and it's pretty impersonal. And it's much more satisfying to be able to see people's expressions on their faces.
The problem with big crowds these days, I toured with John Fogerty last year and the year before. We'd play like these festivals like Bonnaroo. Well, you don't see, the stages are huge because they have, so many bands during the day. I mean, those stages are massive. So already the stage is huge. By the time you get to the front of the stage, you've covered all this terrain, and then there's a security area before you even get to a crowd, and they're down there. That's like 30 feet away. So you really have to adjust. Also with these acts, when I tour with like John Fogerty, you don't even hear your own instrument anymore. They have what we call in-ears. They're molded headphones, not the headphones, earbuds. Yeah. So that, but they're molded to your ear, and they go in tight, and you have a pack, and everybody hears everything through that. Now you have like a mix in your ears. It's whatever you want it to be. But that, to me, that has been a real factor in taking some of the connectivity out of live performance in the professional arena more than anything else. Well, now everyone's right here in your ear. So the other thing, what that does is that takes any real sense of distance or space away. That's based on your ears. That's all gone now. This is all tightened up. It's like when you go running or riding your bike with your iPod. That's why you don't drive with your earbuds in. You can't. It takes you into another world. So what they have to do now on these tours, or what they'll do, is they have to now set up 2 more mics to record the audience, and then they'll mix that in. Well, that's not real either. So you have fake audience, a mix of the band. To me, it's like playing a video game of playing a big show. I see my hands doing it. I feel myself playing it. I hear myself playing it, but there's a whole level of disconnect because now you're not really hearing his sound. You're hearing the way that guy mic'd it.
Right.
So it becomes automatically a combination studio experience, iPod experience, and you're playing. And again, this is just me and a lot of guys my age and older. It's hard for us to get used to the fact that I'm not hearing my amp. I'm not feeling my amp. So, for instance, B3. One of the most glorious things about playing B3 organ is the Leslie cabinet. And one of the most glorious things about it is this low end. Now, a lot of people out there don't hear the low end, but everyone on stage feels it. That's all gone within ears. All you hear, it's all that high-end stuff, whatever the sound guy can squeeze into these little tiny ears, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That's a pain. But the main thing that you don't notice until you notice it is you don't feel the audience anymore. You don't feel it. All that stuff we were talking about before, the buzz and the murmur and the weight of the audience out there behind the curtain or whatever, you don't feel that anymore. All you do is you hear whatever these 2 ambience mics are picking up. So a crowd at Bonnaroo doesn't sound that much different than whatever crowd they're filming in a theater. So you always hear this kind of through microphone version of the crowd. And that, I hate that.
Another factor in making that connection is the musician's belief in the music.
If I was out there playing songs that I thought were not good, then it's hard to have that connection in the band and then the connection to the audience, you know. Like a song like Slide It In, I think that's just a great song about a subject that, you know, it's just one of those subjects that people down on Music Row in Nashville are not going to be writing about that subject, you know.
Right.
And so, but that doesn't mean on Music Row there are people who are crafting really great songs, but it's craft. Like, to me, there's a difference between the craft and art, where people are just writing a song because they're not thinking about, well, who can we get to cut this song, or who, you know, is this going to be a hit, or what can we do to make this song a hit, or whatever. But then there's the art where people just write songs because they can't not write them, you know. You know, I have played songs that I would probably never buy the record or whatever, but still been on stage and just had that moment where, you know, everyone's just playing so well that it's just, you know, it reaches this point. And if you can do that and get that across to the audience. I remember playing once, I was playing with Alison Moore which I don't know if you know who else it is, but there's a song she did called Alabama Song, and it's got this really beautiful bridge. The bridge of the song is really beautifully written. And it was one of those things where I always loved playing that bridge. And one day, I think we're in Chicago, and we were playing that song, and we played the bridge, and it was just that magical thing where we hit the nail on the head, and we finished the bridge, and the audience just burst into applause. You know, like it was that moment where it's like, okay, you know, everybody got it. It was so well executed, and we were all on that, you know, that wave. Yeah. And so, yeah, there's memorable moments like that, you know, where it's like everybody really nails it.
Connections are made in the studio as well, and it's up to the artists to learn how to transfer their knowledge to different areas.
Everybody's favorite records. It's not because the performance was perfect, but it's because it got the feelings there, you know? Perfection is not the ultimate goal. Although there are some, you know, like some of those big kind of country acts or stuff, you know, really the whole deal is to play the songs exactly like the record. That's, some people, that's what they want to hear. They want to go and hear exactly that. Whereas, you know, for me, it's about being in the moment. You know, you're in that moment, and every performance is a performance of the song. And there's that, in the studio, it's the same way with a lot of people. You know, like recording with John Prine, really all you're doing for him, he's just capturing the performance of the song. He's not worried about if every note is right, you know, because if we did it 5 more times, it would be 5 different performances, and everyone would be a little different. And then you just go, well, this is my favorite today, you know, and then if we were to go tomorrow, we might play the song totally different. You know?
So when I do session work, and even though that's a different relationship, but still, when you make a recording, you want a listener to hear something that's in another intangible. What's exciting on a recording? Why is it exciting? Why is it that, you know, Regina Spektor's first album or Amy Winehouse's first album didn't do as well as the next album that was a hit? Because maybe the songs were better, maybe the artist got better, maybe the producer in the end, you know, unless something just goes technically wrong or whatever. But, and that's what I try to plan that far. That's as far as, I mean, I can't guarantee that it's going to be transcendent. Like I work in the studio, and you can be hunched over and looking at your knee all day and be playing great stuff that they use and like, and say, yeah, that's great, let's do another song. That sounds great. You know, more stuff like that. Because you're just in your head, you're looking for a sound and not a visual and not any other. It's just, you know, something that's going to sound. So when people listen to a CD or an MP3 or whatever, all they're doing is hearing sound. And live is different. It's still sound, but it's like I'm producing the sound with my hand and you're watching me do it. And it's coming off of the guitar and it's coming out of my voice now. And so it's totally different. And they're both fun. You know, but it's just all about getting inspired.
Making connections happen more frequently as an artist learns to control the many variables.
And also, I have a bunch of songs that I know will break the ice, you know, and I know where to put them in the set. And it doesn't have to be always the same. I've been experimenting with moving stuff around that used to always be at the end of the show. But there's just a good way to say hello to people, and there's a good way to take them up and take them back down and take it back up again. And I mean, there's a real formula, but it just works. Well, you put out a new album, and you have songs that you hopefully you know that will be effective at the gig. Yeah. you know will be good ones to play live. But so then you introduce a bunch of songs from the new record, and then it whittles itself down to like 3 to 5. It's just the average, which is good. I mean, it's good to have those 2 to 5, songs, depending on. But then you get one that really works somewhere, and it becomes part of the set, and the one that works, the song that works before it and after it, and it, and then you try to switch it around, and sometimes you switch it around, and it's like, oh, I found a new way to do this, and sometimes you switch it around, and you're like, oh, I got to go back to the old way because that didn't work. I like to have my dobro and my regular guitar. I like to have an electric guitar if I can, because I can take people some other places because I'm a guitar player, and then there's people that can take you places with a long story, and then the song fits it at the end and leads to the next one, so I'm just I'm dabbling more with talking to the crowd than ever, because I'm just more comfortable with it. And I think that's what I'm trying to say is that you learn from when you have those moments, you want to recreate them and you want to make them happen every night if you can. And not every night is magic night, but if you have moments like that on a regular basis, then you do learn. Even if you're not consciously taking note of it, over time you sort of learn your behavior changes to where if I act like this, it's more likely to happen.
Okay, so what do you do to make it more likely to happen?
Well, the first thing is that you warm up before you play in any way that you can. If there's no backstage, then you might have to leave the venue and go walk around the block 4 or 5 times and get your blood flowing. So you're not just coming out of sitting on a bar stool or sitting backstage and being still and then going up there and, like you want to be. I like to be feeling like I've already played 3 or 4 songs when I start now. And I used to not worry about that. I was just more like, I got to get food, or now I'll just, I'm kind of like you guys. I have a suitcase full of food in my car so that I don't have to worry. I'm responsible for my own blood sugar, and so I can play my show. You know what I mean? That's why I was looking for food in Key West late, because I didn't eat supper, because I wanted to play the gig and not be sleepy and not be, weighed down. So, I went running. I sat and I played the guitar and sang for an hour before I went on. And I was luckily I was walking distance from the venue, so I had a good parking place. I left it there. I walked back to where I was staying. Took my guitar with me. I think I just walked down the street playing the guitar, and then I changed clothes and walked back so that I was ready to go. I was warmed up, and when I started, I felt like I didn't have to get warmed up. And I mean, a lot of people do, like real professional people in like a theater do that because, guys like me have spent a lot of time like playing a place like this where there's nowhere to go, and so some people, get their guard down by having a few drinks, and that can be okay, and that can be a slippery slope that, you bottom out and have to figure out what you're going to do after that, after you quit drinking, or whatever. So I think it's really like learned behavior, whether you consciously do it or not. Like I'm aware of it because we're talking about it, and like figure out what people way out on the Gloucester Peninsula of Virginia are going to respond to, and the people in Key West and the people in wherever, Iowa City and Starkville, Mississippi. I mean, but it ends up being the same stuff because they're just people, and you have songs that hopefully have some good songs, and you can break the ice. But it's important how you start, because you want to keep their, and all kind of little things. Like I know how to play in all sorts of crazy alternate tunings, but I don't use them live because it takes too long to tune, and I don't have a guitar tech with 10 guitars over there. So, and also I can't afford to fly with more than one instrument, or 2 if I'm lucky. So I have to learn how to do it with one guitar and get to the song fast, so I'll keep people's attention, especially if it's somewhere where they don't know me at all, and there's plenty of places like that I've been many times and they still don't know me. So I got to keep trying to get their attention, you know, this night. And if I don't get to come back to that city for 2 years, then I kind of start over again every couple of years, which creatively is exciting because you have to figure it out every time. It's a challenge.
What do you do if people aren't paying attention to you?
If people are talking loud, sometimes I just get as quiet as I can. Unplug the guitar. Just play with sing without a mic. Sometimes they get quiet. If there's somebody singing without a mic, sometimes they get quiet. Sometimes they don't. In that case, you can maybe, if you're not plugged in anymore, then you can just walk right over to the loud people's table and sing for them.
Okay.
I've done that.
You're telling stories and you're taking them on a trip. And I believe that every good story, every good song picks you up, takes you on an excursion, and lets you back off where you got on, you know. And once I started writing songs about myself almost exclusively and telling stories about myself, I found a new, deeper bond with my listeners, and I learned what I said earlier about resolving the song at the end of the song, bringing it to a close where you drop the listener off at the same bus stop that you picked them up at. With an audience, what I do is tell them about myself with the first few songs as best I can, and establish a connection where, okay, now you know who I am. You know what we're getting into here. Set the stage, set the scene. And then it's my job to keep their interest, because you'll lose the communicative focus of what you're doing if I let them lose interest. Okay, where I was, where you start off letting them know who I am, and then I take them on a journey through, whether it's a 45-minute opening set or a 2-hour headliner show. My job is to get their attention and hold their attention. And one thing I started to say was, I have the good fortune now of having learned how to write those songs, and to write songs with no dead space in them that lose the train of thought and therefore lose the audience's interest. I can hold an audience's interest with the material I have now, primarily later material, more recent material, and I can hold an audience's interest for 2 hours now. Wasn't always able to do that with the earlier material that was not as honest, not as connected with who I am and the story I'm telling people.
It's like when you know what to do next, or when you, even if you've made your set list and you follow it and it just was right, you know. But that's another instinct lesson that you learn, or what works. When is it okay to not be up tempo? You know, when is it okay to bring it way down, and how long can you keep it down before you need to bring it back up? You know, and it's different. Like, go to Ireland, they'll listen to you tell a story and play ballads. Then they'll sit there and they won't fall asleep or anything. They'll sit there for 3 hours. Just their culture. Oh, I mean, you know, you're sitting in like a place where it's cold outside and it's warm inside, and you're in your sweater and you're sitting in a chair. I mean, it's a formula for me to go to sleep. But their culture likes that, you know. But soda, I mean, you know, there's kind of the folk clubs here, and that can happen too. But anyway.
Well, first of all, let's talk about the music itself. Music's a universal language. Music is, it transcends language. You know, you can play for German people, and they don't catch all the words, they'll catch all the music. And that unites people. Music unites people. Kevin Spacey on 60 Minutes once said that live theater, you get that breath, that moment when the performer and the audience are sharing that moment of breath, where it is so close the audience and the performer are so unified and on the same track that you can have that moment of breath. And it's so communal. It's such a unity of everyone in the room with you at the moment that it's very spiritual. It's very intimate. It's a really good, close exchange of communication. And exchange, it's not just me communicating with the audience is communicating back. We're of one accord. All our minds and hearts are locked together for that beautiful moment.
Tommy Womack does Tommy Womack better than anyone else does.
And it's really just trust in yourself. You have to listen to your gut, you know. That's really all you have. And it changes over the years, you know. And it may be that, you know, when I play now, if I could come back and be like 20 and watch myself now, I might not like what I see from a perspective of me when I was 20. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter because it's not going to happen. So I think about that every once in a while. You know, I'm like just like a boring old folk guy now, but I don't think so. But you have to be self-critical and ask that question. You know, it's just like being any kind of artist for a living. You have to look in the mirror. You have to invent your job every day, over and over again.
I'm not presenting an image, I'm presenting you as I am. That's another aspect of my communication with audiences, is you're getting the real deal. This is, to an extent, I'm playing a character. I'm playing a character named Tommy Womack, and I do Tommy Womack better than anybody else does. I present myself as a neurotic, scared guy with a day job and a lot of worries and fears that everybody else has. Now, when I get up on stage every night, I'm not necessarily that neurotic or scared at the time, but the character of Tommy Womack is. That's what I do. You establish a connection with the audience with your first few numbers, and you hold that connection, and as you play more shows for more of the same people and other people who the audience members I've initially played for, they communicate with their friends, bring them to the shows, and what forms is a bond between the audience and the listener. And so long as I hold up my end of the bargain and keep communicating with them and keep giving them my best, material-wise and performance-wise, the bond grows deeper over time to where the audience can pick up on more and more subtleties of what I'm doing, and they feel they know me better, and I get to know them better. And it gets easier to throw nuances, little inside jokes, as you will, that'll get laughs from the audience because they've seen me 7 times and they know what that little inside joke is. Might lose a few of the newcomers, but they'll come around so long as I don't do too much of it, right? People can come into shows more often with an idea already of who I am. And what I do then for the show is expand on who I am, and this is important, I should have mentioned this already, who they are and why I understand what they're going through because I go through it myself, and here's an example, yada yada yada.
I mean, I'm playing songs and I'm singing the same words every night, but if you're by yourself or with one other person, there's a lot of room to change it up. And then there's stories that you tell over and over again, and they evolve over time, and you know, to introduce a song. And sometimes it's just you're just inspired to say. Just the other night in Key West, I just had a lot to say, and it went well. You know, everybody enjoyed it, and it was back and forth. A friend of mine said he saw Jackson Brown the other night, and he was having like a almost like a Q&A between every song, not on purpose. He didn't say, does anybody have a question? But people would yell stuff out and he'd respond to them, and then he'd go, oh yeah, I'll play that song, and he'd play, you know. So, and that's if you like music, then you don't just like it to be like a Vegas show where every move is planned. So, like I've been working with an artist recently who's very comfortable singing, great singer, great songs, but not comfortable having anything to say. And this person seems to be always kind of afterwards kind of having, oh, I really need to learn how to say stuff. And it's like, well, make some stuff up, you know. Sit down and write it, you know, look at your songs and write a set list at home and write some things like that you would say and start saying them, you know, because it's important to give people some context. And there's a lot of intangible stuff too, like what's good material. You know, you don't really know. You think you've got a good song, but you got to go play it in front of people. And sometimes they just could care less about your little song. You know, other times they really respond to it. There's audiences that really like to hear something new they've never heard, and there's audiences that really don't want to hear anything but stuff that they know, which makes it tough on somebody like me, because most people don't know my music. Some people do, but it's not a big giant group of people, you know.
The bond that forms is the tie that binds.
The bond that forms between the performer and the audience that deepens over time. It deepens as the night goes along at that one gig, and it deepens as they grow familiar with your material and listen to the records, and it becomes very familial. You become people's voice. You give voice to their issues and desires. It's almost like you're a prophet. It is like you're a prophet.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people say, well, he's saying exactly what I was feeling in that
Exactly.
song. Yeah.
Exactly. That's, for me, that's just about goal number one.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's a connection in itself, isn't it?
Exactly. That's one of the deepest connections you can have with them. Besides the joy that, you know, is unexplainable. You can explain yourself in the lyrics as far as you can go with the topic at hand, but the music part of it is explaining the unexplainable, explaining the stuff that's too deep for words to capture. Listen, the blues there, the howling wolf there, the emotion in his voice, the piano you're hearing, the harmonica, that's all explaining the unexplainable part of what he's singing.